Welcome to the Lowdown Mortgage Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the mortgage architects that are building design into their business to unlock scale and achieve freedom. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! And joining me today is someone who started out as a chemical engineer, spent nearly a decade doing environmental compliance work at one of the largest Department of Energy sites in the country, and then built one of the most well-known lending operations in his corner of South Carolina from the ground up, all while running a 73-acre farm on the side. Matt Hunter, welcome to the Lowdown.
Connor, thanks for having me today.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure to have you. I've enjoyed getting to know you and looking forward to getting your story out there because I'm sure there are listeners here that could relate to your situation in some way, shape, or form. And, you know, your wisdom and experiences might just help them unlock something that they've struggled with. And so I want to start here just to kind of get a little bit of your origin story out there. I mentioned in the introduction, you started as a chemical engineer. You actually had a period of time where you were a stay at home dad and then got into mortgage lending. Looking back, was there ever a moment where you thought, like, okay, I actually belong here in mortgage, or did it just sort of slowly sneak up on you? And then one day you're like, all right, I'm in it for the long haul?
I'd have to say it snuck up on me. I mean, what kid says, I want to be a mortgage loan officer when I grow up? And it was never that. Being an engineer, your brain kind of thinks in black and white in boxes. When I try to draw pictures, I usually use graph paper to do it. And that's just part of the training. And so I didn't think that a mortgage loan officer is something that I would ever be. Like you said, I just kind of fell into it. My mom had started a mortgage company. She was doing really well. We had a little bit of a refinance boom. She needed some help. And according to my wife, I needed a job. So I started doing mortgages. And, she was a great teacher, but I didn't know what I was doing. So she, held me by the hand and helped me along. And it really kind of took off from there. So as I became more well known, we had clients, that were coming to me and not her. And it was something that just naturally progressed. And so one day my wife asked me, are you going to ever retire? And I'm like, we're in this for the long haul. And so I've been here since, still doing what I do on a daily basis.
That's great, man. And so I want to kind of get into the family side of things because you see a lot of, family working together in the industry, whether it's a husband and wife or, generational, where you see sons or daughters kind of taking over their parents' business. You and your mom, you mentioned, kind of ran that brokerage together for years. What was that like working alongside family, and what did she teach you about the industry that you still kind of carry with you today?
So what she taught me was really customer service, is putting the client first, that we're here to work for them. They're trying to achieve something that sometimes they weren't sure they could. And so it's always been that customer first mentality that she really impressed on me. And she did a great job of it. She knew that she could fight for loans, that a realtor had a difficult client. They're usually picking up the phone and talking to Beverly. And so it was just kind of a natural progression that I learned watching her in what I try to do for my clients.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you mentioned to me previously that she got off to a great start, right? Like was
Yeah.
closing loans immediately and really just kind of wanted to go about it on her own. What do you think, what about Beverly gave her that kind of confidence? And how did watching her kind of go through all of that shape the way you approach your business?
To know my mother, she is a force of nature. And, when she decides she's going to do something, she's going to do it. And rarely is there a time where, she second guesses it. She had said, if I can close 5 loans in the first month that I'm off on my own, I'll be a success. And she closed 8. And so it just kind of took off from there. And watching that growth, watching her do what she did to go really from not being in the mortgage industry to leapfrogging and launching out into it was really inspiring.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. So, with your start being having a parent in the industry, are you trying to guide your kids into mortgage, or what's that
Funny you
conversation
should
like around?
ask that. So our oldest is in med school, and
Okay.
he takes a lot after my mother, where if he puts his mind to it, he's going to accomplish it. So he's in his third year and getting ready to interview for residency spots. Our youngest had a very different path. And so he went 2 years to a traditional college, came home one day and said, this just really isn't for me. Don't know what I'm going to do. Whatever it is, degree I'm going to come out with, I'm probably not going to enjoy that. And so we said, Zach, what is it you're going to do? And so he said, I want to get enrolled in the American College of Building Arts, which is a little college in Charleston, South Carolina. It was birthed out of Hurricane Hugo, and they teach a lot of the trades that were lost over time. So things like plasterwork, architectural blacksmithing, timber framing, all those things that you picture in a Charleston style home. Well, those people had all passed away and nobody knew how to repair the homes that were damaged. So the school was like I said, birthed out of that, and he did a 4 year degree and came out as a blacksmith, basically. He One of the neat things about the college is that during the summers you can't take the summer off. You have to go and work for somebody in your industry. And so he had done a couple summers in Virginia working for a couple of different blacksmiths. And when he graduated, one of them offered him a job, so he went to Virginia, was working for this guy, and the expectations just were not matching up. Zach thought it was going to be more of an apprenticeship to bring him up, and his boss thought that he would already come out with more knowledge than what he had. And so those two things just were not matching. The blacksmith started to do a lot of collaborations with his wife, who did mosaic tile work. And so they'd do a big table, she'd do a band around the outside of it. And it just really wasn't working. We're like, Zach, come on home. So he came home, spent about 3 months, and one day he says, Dad, tell me what you do. So I explained what I did. And one of the things that we do at Assurance before we hire somebody is a cultural index. Puts you in different categories, kind of tells you about your bends, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, just by answering some really easy type of survey. And so when he finished his, the HR sent me back his and then sent me back mine. And she said, you're basically a mirror of each other. So I'm like, all right, well, if I can do it, you. So brought Zach on as a loan officer, and he did not like commission work. Up 1 month, no closings, you go on a draw, you got to build it back up. And so that just really was not a comfort area for him. And so I moved him into an LOA role, and he worked another year as an LOA and wanted to move to Pittsburgh. So last October, he moved to Pittsburgh. He's working for a title company in their tax research department. So a lot of the training that we did here, passed on to what he's doing there, and it really kind of fit. Now, will Zach ever be back in the mortgage industry? I don't know. I'm not really sure what his next steps are, but
Yeah.
it's always an adventure with these kids.
Yeah, well, I think that's great. I'm really encouraged by the college that he was a part of, because it sounds like hopefully there's still someone out there trying to preserve making things that are built to last.
There are, if you ever get to Charleston, you need to stop by.
Yeah.
The college is open. They'll take you on a tour, but they do some really neat stuff down.
That's great. Well, and then I love that you were able to get Zach involved in the industry, give him, a feel for it, that he took some interest in it, and that there were some trial runs there. I really appreciate the profile that you mentioned, and then just, being willing to see if it's a good fit. And at the end of the day, like, if we don't give more young people an opportunity to be in the industry, it'll be really, difficult to build up the next generation of the industry. So, we'll see where it goes, right? But you had mentioned before, you were in the broker world. Now you're more on the IMB side of things. What was it that sort of made you make that switch? and what factored into the decision about where you are today?
So when we were a broker, we were always fighting against everybody else's pipeline. If I needed to have a condition reviewed, if I needed to get a CD out or some disclosure sent, a lot of times you go to your account executive, hey, I need this. Like, sorry, we're full to capacity. And so that got really frustrating. And that kind of hit a threshold back in COVID when, everybody was refinancing and you were trying to rush to the finish line and you just weren't able to get priority. And so that led me to not want to be a broker. Now, the other part of it was that my dad was an accountant. He retired and came to work for us at the mortgage brokerage. And he did all the books, he did the call reports, he did all the admin back office stuff. And so when they were looking at retiring, that's really not my bend. Okay. So even though I'm an engineer and I could do that, that's not where my heart lies. And so being bogged down having to do that would take away my ability to originate loans. And so assurance allowed me to have the BOD, the branch operations division, do all of that heavy lifting on the back end. And it allowed me to really focus on originating loans and not having to worry about call reports. And I'm sure if you're familiar with the South Carolina annual report, but it was a monster. I mean, it was 256 fields long, and you exported a file out of your LOS. You had to go in and QC because that export sometimes assigned a alphanumeric and it needed to be numeric. And so you were having to go through every loan that you had done. And it would take me a month to do it. Even though, my dad did a majority of the compliance stuff, he said, here, this is your baby. You deal with it, because I was a little bit better on the technology side.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, a few call outs there. I think it's important to just make the point that everyone's got a different set of needs, and there is no best situation out there. If you were to rank mortgage companies or mortgage environments, in a system. I think it's what's best for the individual. What I love what I'm hearing is you found what's best for you, and that's allowing you to thrive when there was some friction in the environment that you were in previously. And I think that's what's most important about it all is when you identify that there's something that's kind of holding you back or not letting you perform at your highest and best abilities, to kind of be encouraged to make that change and be willing to explore what could be different. And because I see that a lot in the business, right? People that are kind of staying in comfort for the sake of comfort, but not necessarily evaluating what else could be out there. And so I think it's great that you found a good home. And something else that I think is awesome is that you've got a little bit of a team around you. You've got a licensed LOA who you say makes you look like a rock star. Shout out to Kayla. Walk us through what that like two-person operation looks like day to day, and what are the things that she does that most loan officers might try to do themselves and might be better off just sort of staying out of their own way.
Yeah, yeah. So she is really great with details. And so, when she's got a loan file, she basically pre-underwrites everything. She has been in the industry just long enough to really know what the underwriters are looking for. And so when a file's submitted, the underwriter barely needs to touch it. She's done everything up front. So, she thinks through deposits, she thinks through deductions on payroll, so she is doing a really phenomenal job up front. I would rather hassle a client at the beginning than at the end. So it makes things look like we've gone smoothly through everything and it's been an easy path to that finish line. So she does a really good job of being able to take a client. She's very personable. She knows a lot of them. They'll bring her gifts after closing because they know that she did a lot of the heavy lifting and it really wasn't me. But my job is to go out and see realtors and find new clients. She is great at that back end. And so she's starting to learn how to do that front end part of it. And so I think she's going to be a great loan officer on her own, and I'll be hiring another LOA at some point. But we're keeping things purposely small. So we want our clients to feel like they're number one in everybody's book in our office. And so we're purposely, not scaling up to where we can't handle everything. And there are days where, it's a little overwhelming. We've got a lot of clients coming through the pipeline, but each of them tries to get our individual attention.
Yeah. What was the crossroads moment like before you made that hire and added her to your team? Like where at what moment did you sort of go, I need some help and this is why? And if you don't mind just sort of describing that for us, because I know a lot of people who listen to this are facing that moment, or they're at kind of where you are today where they're, looking at adding another assistant. So I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on all that.
So, back in the day when money was falling out of the sky, stated income, stated asset programs, like really back in the day, we had up to 4 LOAs in the office. And between me and my mom, we kept them busy. So as things started to slow down, we'd had a couple leave. We found that, I needed to have somebody that was just my LOA. And so we hired Kayla because of her attention to detail. She has a background in insurance, did insurance for 10 years, still licensed is in that field. But, that really plays into her ability to do what she does for me. And, when we've got somebody that's sending us their homeowner's insurance policy, she can look at it and go, oh, well, maybe you're not getting enough coverage here. Maybe it's too much there. And she can help tailor that with our clients to help them save money.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that you identified the need and then took action. And now the results are, you're starting to see those results and getting to a place where, you might need another person in the future, which is really exciting. Now, one of the things that you shared with me that I absolutely loved is that, one way that you're building relationships with agents is so simple. Like, you're walking your two golden retrievers. You see the painting there on the back wall to nearby real estate offices and actually leaving treats with the agents to give to your dogs. So they get to be the hero there. I love that. And it's so simple. And a lot of people overthink like the business development, but you're really, leaning into just the relational side of it. Has that simple sort of consistent routine produced referral relationships, or what have been some of the outcomes of that?
Sure. I mean, our realtors that will see me walk by with the dogs, they'll come out and talk to me and, hey, I've got this client, we're having problems with this or that, can you help them out? And so it's a constant reminder that I'm only a few steps away. And we moved downtown. My parents sold the office that we were in when they retired. And I purposely chose downtown for a reason. And there 4 real estate offices really within walking distance. And so I'm able to take the dogs out. It helps me with my weight, it helps them with their weight. But we go around and we will stop by realtors' offices. And it's just the fact that it's a consistent thing. They know what time I'm going to be there. And, if they've got a client that I need to talk to, a lot of times, we have conversations right there in their office, which is really great, because it's all about that relationship, knowing that somebody's going to be around, that you can get them on the phone or they can stop by the office and, help them through disclosures, dropping off documents, whatever it is. The fact that we're here really is a bonus for the realtors.
Yeah. And like, talk about having an ace up the sleeve, a number one icebreaker. Like,
Yeah.
have two adorable dogs with you. I think it's a win every time, unless they're not dog people, right? So, so I
We
get
have
it.
a few realtors that are not dog people. And so I know who to kind of back off on,
Right.
but they still see you, and so it's still that constant of being out in the community.
Yeah, I love that. And so we referenced this earlier. You've got a 73-acre farm, chickens, geese, right? Yeah, I think you said a couple of motorcycles, obviously the two dogs. How do
Actually,
you
I don't have
protect your
motorcycles.
Sorry, I don't know why I have
No, that
motorcycles
that's
in my notes.
okay. You see motorcycle stuff all over my office. I have a love of motorcycles, but I know one that we live on a dirt road. It's difficult to get down the dirt road. Sometimes it's impassable. Two, it would sit in the garage getting dirty. I'd be fussing about not having time to enjoy it. And so the wind in my hair became a lot less important over time. And so
Yeah.
I'll look at them all day long, love to look, but I am at this point not going to own one.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So no motorcycles, but how do you
Motorcycles.
protect your personal life when mortgage can, for so many can be like an all-consuming thing? How do you find that balance?
So there was a real struggle between me and my wife for a long time because, we'd go on vacation and I would be on the computer all the time or on the phone trying to talk to clients. And so we've kind of set some boundaries. Again, with Caleb being the rock star that she is, I can go away and know that things are being handled. So I've got the trust in somebody that I know has my back and is willing to go that extra mile to allow me to have that space. And so setting boundaries is really important. Now I'll still take phone calls. I'll text with clients, but I try to really be purposeful on spending time with my wife and just blocking off a little bit of time during the evening where I can return some emails.
Yeah. Well, I love that. It's and your wife is a physician, right? If I recall
So
correctly.
she's a
Yeah.
physician. She has started her own business. She has a lifetime interest in gardening. And so she got sort of downsized. They cut her hours back. And so she's like, I'm going to do something else. And so she's combining being a physician with her love of gardening and has started a garden consulting business where she can go out and teach people how to put in a raised bed where they can eat out of that garden 52 weeks out of the year, and it helps them to be healthier because they know where their food's coming from. It's coming right out the back door. And so it's neat to see she's really just getting it off the ground. And so it's been kind of fun to watch and participate in.
Yeah, that's very cool. And so I'm going to transition for a second here, and then we'll start wrapping things up. But when we were talking before, you mentioned that you're in Aiken, South Carolina, right? And so that's right across the river from Augusta, Georgia, but it's kind of two different worlds, as far as markets go. If you were ever going to go plant a flag over there, what would the first 90 days look like for you in terms of earning trust in a market where you're virtual unknown at that point?
Sure. And ideally, what I'd be looking for is to hire a loan officer that's already embedded in that community. Me trying to break into it, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. I'm not going to be able to walk my dogs around to different real estate offices in Augusta because it's about a half an hour away. And so, what I would really like is to find a loan officer that is looking to make a change and would be interested in coming on board because I view that trust, I hold it in the utmost. Okay. So, I don't want to hire somebody and send them out and just expect them to kill it. An experienced loan officer would really be helpful in that market just because, like you said, it's kind of foreign to me. I'm not that familiar with it. And so I'd like to have somebody that already knows what they're doing there and kind of knows that clientele and what the realtors want.
Yeah. Well, I love that, and that you're being thoughtful of those types of things and setting someone up for success, and just knowing, using what you've learned along the way to help someone else be successful is really what it's all about in the end. And you're at a point now where you're kind of nearing the twilight years, so to speak, that people would say about a career, right? You mentioned you'll be 60 years old next year.
Yeah.
Your goal
Yeah. Hard to believe.
to build a yeah, build a branch to step back where you can manage a little bit more. Like, what does that version of your business look like, and what would need to be true in order for you to feel like you've built something that you can finally go, okay, now I can start stepping away from?
Yeah. So, it's going to take some time. I'm going to need to find, at least one more loan officer that can be here and kind of take over what I've done, what I've built, and love to be in the background, love to be the mentor to that person so that step by step, we can walk through it and form a partnership. And so that's really, how I would like to grow the business is to bring on basically a partner in our branch that I know that I can trust, that can do the things that I need to fall back and take less part in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that you're, thinking of that. And I think that, anything that we set our minds to, we can accomplish. And, it's an interesting thing, this mortgage business. We get to a place where we start getting closer towards the end, and you start thinking about legacy and exit strategies and different things like that. And the whole kind of dynamic starts to change. And there really are a lot of different seasons that we experience professionally where priorities shift a little, and a definition of success might change slightly from what you might have thought 5 years ago to what you think of today. And so I just think it's always cool to have conversations around those kinds of things, because not everyone is like in the middle of grind it out kind of mode. And so it's but at the same time, success is what you define it as. And so, anyway, Matt, I appreciate all that you've shared throughout this conversation. I want to give you an opportunity before we say goodbye, like just to speak your mind. If there's anything that I haven't gotten a chance to ask you about, or something that you would like to share with anyone who's listening today.
One of the things that you hit on earlier was investing in bringing new loan officers into the industry. As I look around, when we do sales conferences, there's a lot of people that look like me, and there's not a lot of younger people coming in. We need to do a better job of recruiting really minority clients, or not clients, but loan officers, people that can reach communities that I'm just not able to, people that have a voice that can be heard over, some middle-aged white guy. And so what I'd really like to see is that next generation really starting to blossom. I'd love to hear kids say, yeah, when I grow up, I want to be a mortgage loan officer, and
Right.
it not be something that's a foreign concept, because it's a great career and I've really enjoyed it. I'm working on my almost third decade being in the industry, and I still enjoy it. I view it as a vocation and not just employment. I want to invest in that person that is looking to buy a home. I had a client that I met with 6 years ago, and we had a conversation. He really was not in a place where he'd be able to buy a home. And so I sat down and said, okay, here are the things that you need to do to be able to get to where you want to be. And it took him 6 years, but we closed on a home for him last year. And, he couldn't have been more grateful for the time that I took in, explaining, okay, here's where you are. It's not where you need to be. And here's how you get where you need to be. And so, something like that really fills my cup. I get a lot of joy and pleasure out of seeing somebody that, a lot of first time buyers that just don't know what they're doing. And like I said, we take them by the hand and walk them through the process. One of the taglines for our company is that we're boutique built, but enterprise back. So, we try to focus on that concierge level of service for somebody. If it's a first time buyer, somebody that's bought 12 homes, we want to be that person that can walk them through, okay, here's where we are. But, we've got enough technology that it allows us to smooth that transition so that they have a great experience every time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great call out. And I love that you're helping, someone over that extended period of time, and making sure that they get to achieve their dream of home ownership, because they're doing the hard work, right? Getting to where you can be approved for the loan is really the hard work. And so I love that you were able to lay out a path and advise someone that, that was able to get to achieving that. So, Matt, I just want to say thank you for having, for coming on the show and agreeing to be a part of this and kind of get your story out there. I hope anyone who's listened here has picked up a thing or two from you that they can implement into their own business. And, I just wish you nothing but the best moving forward, man. It's been great to chat with you today.
Connor, I feel the same way, and I appreciate your time. anytime you want to talk, I'm happy to have a conversation with you.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate you. You have a good one.
All right.